Welcome, Mere Model Lads, to another episode of the Mere Models book recap. It is indeed that time again, the last Monday of the month, where I, Kyrin, host of the Mere Models podcast, go over all the books that were reviewed on the Mere Models book reviews channel during this last month, give you some additional thoughts and whatnot, an opportunity to also thank everyone with the Boostagram Lounge, and then have a look-see at what's upcoming for December 2022. We're already at the end of the year. Whoa! Awesome. So 2 books for this month. A little bit disappointing on my end. Both were read by me. The 2 that I have were How books, 2 How books indeed. And unfortunately, one was going away for a fair time in little mini holidays and jaunts away. So we just haven't had that much time between the 2 of us to actually do as many book reviews as we normally like to do. Hopefully that will be improving for December and the next month. So both books I gave a 7 out of 10, and I'll start with Michael Pollan's How to Change Your Mind. So one of the things you might notice from the book review was I didn't want to talk too much about my own experiences with psychedelics, as I kind of didn't want to taint the review, much like the scientists who were investigating all of these studies and whatnot somewhat tainted their own research by having had to experience the psychedelic effect to know what the hell their patients and what their, the people they were studying were talking about. So for myself, I've definitely tried mushrooms and the LSD, not DMT. That is, it sounds pretty wild, maybe one day, but my general philosophy with these is that they can be very dangerous, and that anything that is kind of destabilizing to the mind should be viewed with extreme caution. Stimulants of all sorts of things that can really dramatically affect you can do this. And just a casual offhand story here, but when I was in Mexico, I was with some friends, and this kind of like, friends of friends, that sort of deal. And we all went out one night, and this one guy in particular, and a lot of them actually did a similar thing, but this one guy in particular mixed alcohol with caffeine, with weed, and with, I'm guessing, some sort of not psychedelic, but MDMA or something like that. All within a couple of hours of himself, and I think a mysterious pill that he got someone somewhere. And he had a complete mental breakdown in Oaxaca in Mexico. It's kind of like middle of Mexico, and just was not the same. There was something off about him. He totally lost his mind for a night and had to be actually restrained by the police and put in a hospital for a while. And it is likely that some sort of thing triggered schizophrenia, that he might have had a dormant sort of thing like that. And yeah, his parents basically had to fly into Mexico, take him home. And I don't know what's happened to him, but that surely was so strange and such a rare thing that, it wasn't good. It wasn't good. Let's put it that way. So, psychedelics, I think they're important to if they intrigue you, and if you are think that they might benefit you somehow, to test them out for yourself and to understand, okay, the world can be a radically different place than what I think it is. I see nothing wrong in that, but being a psychonaut and, taking heroic doses and really seeking out ego dissolution is something I'm just very wary of, very, very wary of. So those are my general thoughts in relation to psychedelics. I'll jump now into a couple of the interesting things that came out from the book as well. On page 68, there was a funny quote of this guy. So he'd just had this frightening or bizarre supreme importance of surrendering to the experience. And Boothby, the philosopher, took the advice to heart and found that he could use the idea as a kind of tool to shape the experience in real time. So he talking about how he's doing this, and then Over and over again, I had the overwhelming sense of infinity being multiplied by another infinity. I joked to my wife as she drove me home that I felt as if I had been repeatedly sucked into the asshole of God. I don't know why they got I just really found that funny. Really found that funny. The other thing which caused me to pick up and take some notice was something I've talked about from the John Keats poetry that I read, which I believe it was just called Poems or Poems by John Keats or something like that. And it wasn't particularly in the poems, but upon reading more about John Keats, he had this idea of something called negative capability. And there was a reference to this twice in the book, of which I thought was really intriguing. And so he was talking about Keats, was referring to Shakespeare described as negative capability. And so this is the ability to exist amid uncertainties, mysteries, and doubt without reaching for absolutes, whether those of science or spirituality. It makes no more sense to say I'm 100% convinced of a material worldview than to say I'm 100% convinced of the literal version of the Bible. And this was also on page 271 as well, where this idea of not being too drawn into an extreme version of Keats' negative capability. And this is where it's somewhat what I think psychedelics can help do, which is it can somewhat either prove to yourself through just an undeniable fact of like, holy shit, I'm seeing things in front of my eyes. I'm feeling things that I've never seen, I've never felt before. I'm smelling, my senses are so radically altered that I might not have this certainty of exactly how the world works before it did, which can certainly be a destabilizing effect. But I think can also have this effect if you can somewhat embrace Keats' negative capability, which is, okay, it can kind of be a humbling experience in a way. It's like, I'm not 100% certain of everything that I used to think I was. And then this is the important part, being able to exist amongst that uncertainty, to not have it be a anxious existential threat or something like that. And it's more just of oh, okay, indeed, what I think is reality is certainly, the atoms and materialistic and smells and sights and things, and just like I'm living in right at this moment. And then if I took, 2 tabs of LSD, that would certainly showcase another side of reality, which would maybe think, what I see isn't maybe what is all there, and that there's other things out there, and this is okay as well. And I don't have to attribute that to neural pathways in the default mode network shutting off and a real scientific based explanation, nor do I necessarily have to attribute that to a God or some sort of universal consciousness, which is part of every atom and, the waves of the universe reaching into me via God's asshole or something like that. So no, you don't. I think that negative capability is certainly something that I've found useful in my life. And I think psychedelics can maybe be a way of showcasing this or helping someone to find that as well. So yeah, those were the main things that I really took from the How to Change Your Mind, the New Science of Psychedelics by Michael Pollan. And it was a very, very good read. This was definitely a new book, which I feel is very, very useful. And speaking of new books, the other book that I reviewed on the channel was Matt Ridley's How Innovation Works, published in 2020. The How to Change Your Mind was in 2018. Very rare do I read 2 books published less than within the last decade, back to back, and very rarely at all. I was just going through all of my general book reading, and usually the kind of like the average book for over the last 20 would probably be like 1950 or something like that. So it's, usually I have a tendency to go to older books, the classics. This one is kind of been on my mind recently of just innovation and especially the cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, and how that can innovate and change the world, and perhaps some of these other crypto assets as well, like I like to call them. So in here, there was, the review came out not too long ago, and I think I talked about how, in general, I'm a fan of it, of innovation. In general, I'm not a fan of the things that stymie innovation, i.e. governments, regulations, IP laws, the ability to sue people out the arse to protect your rent-seeking behavior. I'm not a fan of that. And yeah, that was my general idea from the book. There was a couple of interesting things that really take from this. So one of them was talking about these experiments on page 70, 71. So this was Jonas Silk in Pittsburgh, and as he was trying to come up with a polio virus. And so what he was doing was he was growing tissue culture, vast quantities of the virus in the minced kidneys of monkeys. And so by 1953, he was killing 50 monkeys a week for their kidneys, growing the viruses in flasks of kidney tissue culture, and inactivating them with 13 days of exposure to formaldehyde. The vaccine thus produced was tested on 161 children and found to cause no harm, no polio, and raised antibodies against the polio virus. I just thought it was so funny where it was, it's like, how do you get to killing 50 monkeys a week for their kidneys? In the name of science, I don't know. There was something the way it was phrased that really got me going. I thought that was funny. On a less funny note, here's a kind of stat for everyone at home about the potato famine in Ireland in 1845. And this was completely blindsided me in a way of I would have never guessed this, never in a million years. So basically, there was a lot of people living in Ireland due to this kind of innovation of the potato. It made its way over into Europe, and it enabled many families to live, extend their family dramatically bigger than what was kind of normal, I guess, for the age. And this then resulted in what you would call overpopulation. And so when this big famine came through, and basically the potato crops rotted in the fields above and below ground. And within a few years, 1 million people had died of starvation, malnutrition and disease, and at least another 1 million had immigrated. So there's the particular data point, which I never knew. The Irish population, which had reached over 8 million, plunged and still has not returned to the level it was in 1840. Similar, if less severe, famines caused by blight drove Norwegian, Danes, and Germans across the Atlantic. I had no idea. I would have put on really good money that the Irish population would be massively more now than any other point in history, as I would basically every other country in the world. And so, yeah, learning that not only was it 8 million at one point and now has never reached it, it's still a couple of million below what it was in that time, still using the same geographic boundaries. So amazing. I never would have predicted it, never would have thought about it. Another one which came up was anti-innovators. So this is on page 133. And when this is talking about some scientists who were trying to get the wheat into Pakistan and India, because this was like wheat that had been genetically modified to resist disease, to produce higher yields, to basically just be a generally better product. And it was this guy Borlaug who was trying to convince the government to let the regulations that they had in place, or this ban they had in place, slide, and so that people could start growing it. When I asked about the need to modernize agriculture, both scientists and administrators typically replied, "Poverty is the farmer's lot. They are used to it." I was informed that the farmers were proud of their lowly status and was assured that they wanted no change. After my own experiences in Iowa and Mexico, I didn't believe a word of it. Fuck oath. Man, this is the shit that really riles me up. These are the sorts of things where, basically this it's small examples like this, which no matter how many other examples you could show of, oh, but this regulation saved this farmer because X. I just don't believe it because it's coming from people who would say shit like that. The hubris, the arrogance to say farmers would not want this. They're happy with their lot in life, and talking about Indian farmers basically just trying to subside, and even then just people in general, they're happy with their lot. They wouldn't want a bigger house, more time with their family. They love working 80-hour weeks and shit like that. It gets me angry. Gets me very angry. So that was they will come up with any excuse to hate and dismiss on what is new, and the reason for their behavior. I try not to pick on the regulators too much. It's the entities. It's the government. This amorphous thing with a lack of responsibility. It gets me mad. So another one, which was on page 177, was related to a concept I'd learnt before and subsequently forgotten, and it's called growth by shrinkage. And you would have heard of me, especially if you listen to the Mere Models podcast, a lot talking about how I think growth for growth's sake is the most idiotic and dangerous thing that can really be. A mentality like that is exceedingly stupid, and yet that's the reason. It's growth for growth's sake. It is growing in this kind of materialistic way of, oh, they have a bigger car, so I need a bigger car, and it's this kind of feeling bad because you need this growth, and you want things better, but. And I want things better as well. I want the world to be a better place. And if people want more stuff, fine, go about it. But for me, it highlights this growth by shrinkage, which is talking about how so much innovation is actually not creating more stuff. It's creating stuff, or perhaps even more stuff from less things. So you're shrinking the inputs, the amount of water needed to grow these crops. You're shrinking the amount of fertilizer needed. You're shrinking the amount of time or labor and whatnot. And you're either getting the same product or perhaps an even better version because you've managed to increase it on the upside and cap the downside at the same time. Wow, magnificent. And so this came, I reviewed a book called More from Less a fair while ago about this as well, and by Andrew McAfee. And I'd forgotten about this. I'd forgotten about this concept that it's not growth I hate. It's this rampant, unthinking growth that needs to chew up all the resources that we have and ever increasing amounts for a reason that is purely psychological in a human, and that is a somewhat negative one. It's based on envy, or it's based on greed, or it's based on whatever, and it's not usually a way of, oh, this is actually improving the life of this farmer or of this poor person or this mentally incapable person who can't, access their own thoughts. And so if they have this technology to speak better via a device of some sort or things like this. So yeah, all of that kind of ties together of this idea of growth by shrinkage. So making things better by using less stuff. Man, I'm on top of that. I love it, boy. The last one here was page 244 to 45, talking about patents or patents. I'm not really sure how you say the A in that, but it's the existence of patents that makes the problem of the heroic inventor worse. Again and again, I've documented in this book how innovators wreck their lives battling to establish or defend patents on their innovations. Samuel Morse, Guglielmo Marconi, and many others tied themselves up in courts for years trying to rebut challenges to their priority. In some cases, the establishing of a patent that was too broadly drawn then deterred further innovation. And so, yeah, I was talking about how these innovative people they get caught up in this trap of not of wanting to protect what they've created, and rightly so, because you put a lot of effort in. But this is where I go to the value for value model, and I go, you know what, I should be judged on my latest effort. I should be judged on what I've been doing recently, with, I guess, a small weighting to past efforts for sure, but it shouldn't be the primary focus. Like, I shouldn't be defending right now something that I created 8 years ago. I should be creating something that's even better. You know, it'd be like me trying to stop people stealing the first 100 episodes of the Mere Mortals podcast, whereas I should just be focusing on the next 100 to make it even better, and hopefully it is better. So yes, that's the couple of random thoughts I had from the two books. And yeah, look, talking about value for value, this is a great example where I've been lazy. Me and Juan haven't been producing the value as great as we normally do. We only put out 2 book reviews this last month, and we can see the notice of this, of how this value is not being transmitted to other people. So I'm not getting it back at the same time. So I'm going to jump now onto the Boostagram Lounge, and I'll bring up here what we have. And there was only 3 for this month, and 2 of them were in fact for books that I had done previously. So because I have to record this slightly earlier, because the last Monday of the month doesn't capture, a book review that was released on a Thursday, blah, 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 blah. So 2 of these were from my favorite Slav, Petar. And he says, I hate old-timey word salad type books, even though this one seems like something that wapud. And I'm not sure what he was trying to say there. He might have got cut off. That says 7,623 sats, but I have a feeling it was 7777, because he's been sending that a lot recently. So it could just be the Fountain app. I'm not showing that particularly. That was for the Patrick White's Voss, which was indeed very word salady, but I still enjoyed it. The other one was, I usually hate when books dramatically change direction halfway through. And so this was talking about Ernesto Sabato's on Heroes and Tombs, which did indeed change very dramatically halfway through, and for the worse, in my opinion. But yeah, go check out that book review. The last one was me sending in a small test, and I can see it says 990, and I'm pretty sure I sent in 1,000. So indeed, Fountain is taking that 1% off, and not highlighting the numbers in the exact correct way that they came through as. So once again, Peter, thank you very much for contributing to the show and helping keep this all running and up and smooth. I very much do appreciate that, my friend. Very much thank you. And yes, hopefully more books coming. So speaking of, what are the books that are coming up for December of 2022, the last of the 2022s? So I've got 2 here, which I have been reading at the moment. One is Alexander Pushkin's Eugene, not sure how to pronounce this, Onjin or Onjin. And yeah, it's a poetry book, but it's probably one of the best poetry books I've read so far, to be honest. I'm not generally the biggest fan. I think the best that I have enjoyed have been, it was probably John Keats. And poetry in general doesn't particularly do it for me, but yeah, this one's it's been good so far. I'm also reading Plutarch, The Age of Alexander. So the Plutarch is the author in this case, in which he's going over a whole bunch of people from the BCs, 324 BC, around that age, and yeah, making my way through that. I am a third of the way through Coding for Beginners using Python by Usborne. I don't think it has a particular author in general, and yeah, so I'm just creating some code, trying to learn a little bit of Python. I'm not sure if I'll do a book review on that. Maybe I'll see how I'm going. And I also have here Personal Recollections of Joan of Arc by Mark Twain. I really want to read more Mark Twain books, but it's actually hard for me to find him in the library here. So yeah, I'm not sure. No guarantees if I'll read that one or not. I know Juan still has some Ryan Holiday books up his sleeve, and hopefully he'll be able to put them out and produce them for this upcoming month. And yeah, I think that's it. There's a Value for Value podcast. Like I said, if you enjoy the book reviews that I'm doing and that Juan's doing as well, we just ask that you send in a Boostagram and help support the show. And if the quality is reducing, like I've missed a couple, it's helpful also to know exactly what it is or the reason why you don't want to contribute. So you can do that offline and provide that value to me in a non-monetary way. You can also review the podcast if you want to on iTunes and things like that. Doesn't particularly help me, but if you want to, sure, go ahead, why not? And what I really do appreciate is also sharing the podcast. So if you know other people who have read these books, if you think they'd be interested in these information and whatnot, leaving a comment on the YouTube channel or on any of our social medias is also very helpful. So I really do hope you're having a fantastic day wherever you are in the world. Hope you got some good books up your sleeve. Let me know what you're reading. I would also love to know that. And until the next time, ciao for now. Kyrin out.